today's shir should be Zeichel L'Refuah Shleima of Shoshana bat Miriam and Chaya bat Chava. Right. Now, let's briefly run through the idea of what went wrong with the spies. As we mentioned in the Mission Impossible share last year, the problem with the spies was they wanted to spy out the land on their own terms. They didn't want to be told. They anticipated what they were going to do, and they were the ones who suggested. And then Hashem said, okay, Shelach Lecha Hashem, send for yourself. Like, as it were, it's not my idea, said Hashem. If you want to do it, then go ahead. So what was the idea behind this whole thing? How come Hashem didn't turn around and say, look, I'm telling you, you're going to go into the land, I'm giving it to you, you're going to get rid of all the inhabitants there, and it'll be your land. Eretz Zavad Chalav Udavash. What's the problem? Why you have, I created the world, I know what's best for you, and I'm telling you, you don't need a mission. End of story. How come Hashem, as it were, acquiesced to what these 10 spies wanted to do? Because it was 10 baddies and 2 goodies. Sometimes in chinuch, you get children who are very headstrong, and they want to do things their own way. Now, in a way, it can be good, because you want children to be independent thinkers. But sometimes they get an idea in their head, and they just want to go with that idea. And although you as an adult, either the parent or the teacher or whoever, or the superior in whatever way, will know that what they want to do is not good. But you know that they're not going to listen to you. They have to do it their own way. Now obviously, if you know what they're going to do is going to be harmful, then you'll stop it there and then. But if the idea is in principle bad, but they're not going to come to any direct harm from it, then you'll just say, look, let them do whatever they need to do, and they'll learn their own lesson from it. This is what happened with the spies. The spies didn't come up with an idea that was negotiable. They didn't come up with an idea in terms of advice. They didn't come and say, look, do you think we need to reconnoitre the land? Do you think we need to go into Eretz Israel? Have a good look around, see how we're going to, do our hishtadlut, and then Moshe Rabbeinu would have gone back to Hashem, and Hashem would have said no, or Hashem would have given them the idea on Hashem's own terms. But they came up with the idea, they already had the idea in their head. It wasn't negotiable for them. It was like, look, this is what we have to do, we have to have it, and that's it. It's not up for negotiation. And that was the bad thing. Just like a child can sometimes come up with an idea, and you know that they're not going to listen to you if you say no. No matter how wrong it is for them, they're not going to listen to it. So sometimes you have to say, look, let the child make their own mistakes. This is what Hashem said. And this is not something that's just restricted to children, as you can see here. It's something that anybody can do. If you have an idea in your head, and you're so determined, and you don't want to discuss it with anybody, you don't want to see if it's viable or not, you can see it can come to the most tragic consequences. A person, even though he's got an idea that he feels is so right, it could be that idea is too big for him. It's too big for him to take on. He needs to discuss it with somebody who's going to give him impartial advice, like a Rav or an elder. I'm not saying discuss it with every Tom, Dick and Harry. Like if you're doing a project and you'll go to your friends and you'll say, look, what do you think of this project? And they'll say, no, I think it's bad, blah blah blah, this is what I think is wrong. And then the other one says, no, I think it's good. And the other one says, no, it's not good, it's not bad. And they'll all give you 50 different ideas and end up with nothing. You need to have one pit stop, and that is your Rav or your parents, and run it through them. Whether you take the advice is another thing. If it's a Rav, you really should take his advice. If it's a peer or a parent or somebody who, then it could be that you might also want a second opinion. But you need to share it. You need to involve other people with it. The spies were so bullheaded, it was my way or no way. And that is wrong. You see what the tragic circumstances that came out of that. Because of that, we got Tisha B'Av. We're crying and mourning to this day, thousands of years later, just because of this. This precipitated the whole idea of Tisha B'Av, the crying for no reason. And we also know, as I mentioned, there were two good people within this group of 12 spies, Kalev and Yoshua. His name was not Yoshua at the time, it was Hosea. Says the Pasuk that Moshe Rabbeinu changed Hoshea's name to Yoshua. He added on a Yud, which was, we mentioned last time, the Yud from Sarai came and was added on to Hosea, making Yoshua. I want to give a slightly different idea as to why Hoshea's name was changed to Yoshua at that time. Says the Targum Yonatan. The Targum Yonatan is Yonatan ben Uziel. We know he was the holy Tana who, when the birds were flying over his head, they were burnt because of the fire of his Torah. So listen carefully. The Targum Yonatan said that the reason why Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to give this extra bracha and add this extra letter to Hoshea's name was because Hosea was humble. And that was the reason why he needed an extra bracha, extra protection, extra guidance. But that doesn't make sense. I thought humility was a good thing. What do you mean you need extra protection, extra guidance? That should be the best protection for you. A person goes in with humility. Everyone's supposed to be humble. Hatzneya lechet im Elokecha. It's not quite anava, tzniut, it's a bit different, but humility, anava, is a very, very positive characteristic. Something people should work on constantly. So why was he singled out? Because he was humble. So to understand the answer to this, you have to understand what was the incident with Moshe Rabbeinu's two half-brothers or step-brothers. I'm not sure which one you call them. They were the sons of Yocheved, which is Moshe Rabbeinu's mother. So I'm not sure, is that step-brothers or half-brothers? I'm not sure which one means from the father. Half-brothers. So the Moshe Rabbeinu's half-brothers. How come Moshe Rabbeinu had these two half-brothers? Because way back when when Miriam was a young girl, Moshe Rabbeinu's father Amram separated from his wife Yocheved. He said, look, why should we have more children? Because they're only going to be killed. So then we had this whole thing with Miriam. She came along and said, your Gezerah is worse than the Gezerah of Paro, because Paro only wanted to kill the boys, and now you, obviously she's speaking respectfully to her father, you, my father, you want to not only kill the boys, you don't want to bring them into existence, and also you don't want to bring the girls into existence. You're destroying them from the very outset. And so that's when he complimented her, he said, you're right, and then he remarried his wife Yocheved, and from that came Aaron and Moshe Rabbeinu. But in the meantime, Yocheved got remarried. This is what you don't learn in Sunday school, or in Cheder, I should say. Yocheved got remarried. Who did she? I can't remember who she married. I can't remember his name. Was it El Safan? No, maybe not El Safan. I can't remember his name. Anyway, and from that marriage came two sons, Eldad and Medad. So they were from the same mother, but not from the same father. Now, there was an incident in the Midbar where Eldad and Medad were prophesying in the camp. And what were they prophesying? And of course, when they're prophets in the camp, people will want to come and listen. What's the prophecy? So they're prophesying, Moshe Rabbeinu is going to die and Yoshua is going to take over. So of course, everyone, a big crowd and everyone's listening. And Moshe Rabbeinu got wind of this, and Yoshua got wind of this. Moshe Rabbeinu on one hand said, Halavai, if only everybody would be a prophet, it would be all the better. There's nothing wrong with prophesying. He knew it was the truth. But Yoshua raised an objection. He said, what? They're prophesying about my teacher, Moshe Rabbeinu, dying and not going into Eretz Yisrael. Get rid of these two prophets, Eldad and Medad. Get rid of them. And from that, we learn out that Yoshua was humble. Why was he humble? He was humble because he had tremendous respect for his teacher. He didn't want to hear that his teacher was going to die and not going to enter Eretz Yisrael. But additionally, he was very disturbed by the fact that he would be taking over the position of the manhig of Klal Yisrael, the leader of Klal Yisrael. For him, that was not an option. Me? Who am I to take over from Moshe Rabbeinu, my teacher? And it disturbed him so much, he couldn't take it. And that was his anavah. He thought, who am I? Who am I to take over this position? So because he was so humble, because he didn't feel that this was his position, therefore Moshe Rabbeinu felt it only right that Hosea or Yoshua would need an extra bracha, would need the extra letter added to his name to stabilize his humility, because somebody who's humble can also be at great risk. And let me explain. There's a time to be humble. Admittedly, that's most of the time. But there is a time also to enforce the kavod of the Torah. And when the kavod of the Torah is at stake, then personal humility goes out the window. We already mentioned the story about Dayan Abramsky, about when he got up in court. We mentioned it a couple of times. And he said, I'm under oath, so I have to say that, I have to admit that I'm the Gadol Hador. And what about the Chafetz Chaim, who was also seen shouting and raising his voice when the situation demanded? The same with Rav Moshe Feinstein. You think they were humble little men sitting? No. When the situation demanded, they had to exert their authority. Admittedly, it was only under extreme extenuating circumstances. But when it had to be done, it had to be done. When the job had to get done, the job had to get done. You'll see, I'm going to connect that with another point I'm going to mention later. B'ezras Hashem. So, what was Moshe Rabbeinu's point? He was saying, it's okay for Yoshua to be humble, but you're going to go with the spies. And humility can sometimes mean compromise. Somebody who's humble, to a great extent, can sometimes be manipulated. And these 10 spies, obviously with the exclusion of Kalev, so it's not 11, it's 10. These 10 spies could be a very bad influence. They could draw you over to their way of thinking. They could make you compromise when you're not supposed to compromise. So I'm going to now strengthen your quality of anavah and give you the chizuk to be able to say no to compromise. I will not compromise. Because when I go into the land, I'm not going to say anything bad about the land. There's nothing bad. This is what Hashem promised us. So Moshe Rabbeinu's blessing was indeed to fortify Yoshua, to give him the kalim, to give him the faculties to be able to answer the spies back. It was a chizuk. It was an amazing chizuk. In a way, It was to give Yoshua the quality of being able to also to rebel. Not to rebel against Moshe Rabbeinu and Klal Yisrael and the land of Israel, but to rebel against the spies themselves. There was a story about, it's a fairly recent story, about a father who came to his son's Rebbe. Now this father was not from at all. And this father came to the Rebbe of his son and he said, look, I'm extremely angry with you, Rabbi, because my son, I brought him up to be a proper decent human being. Now he's attending yeshiva, he's learning with you, and he's not going into the family business, and he's not doing what he should be doing, and he's learning all this stuff, and he's keeping these things, keeping these laws, things like milk and meat, and so I never brought him up to be like that. So the rabbi said to him, that's interesting. Tell me, were you ever from a family that was religious? So the father said, yeah, I came from a religious home, but I left it all. It's all ancient stuff. That's all hocus pocus. Doesn't apply to us now. We're living in the 20th century or 21st century. So the rabbi said, and then in that case your son is exactly like you. Because you rebelled against your parents, now he's rebelling against you. Sometimes a person has to rebel. But he's got to rebel for the right reason. He's got to rebel against things that are bad. Like we said last week, a Jew has to stand up and be counted and say, Ani lo mavater, I will not accept the status quo. I won't accept the situation as it is, because it is totally wrong and I cannot stand for it. Of course, the attributes of pshara, of compromise, is an essential quality that every Jew has to have. But there are times when compromise will not work. When it comes to Kavod Torah, when it comes to Eretz Yisrael, and a few other key things where compromise just will not work. It's the wrong thing to do. And also, we mentioned last year when we gave this share, that the reason why the spies came up with this whole spy theory, going into Eretz Canaan with subversive ideas and all these strategies, was because they really and truly wanted to stay in the desert. Because if they went into Eretz Yisrael, then there would be a reshuffling, and then they'd all be jobless. So they wanted to lose their job. Now, based on what we just said about Yeshua, about his humility, about the fact that he didn't want to take over from Moshe Rabbeinu, and he was frightened at the prospect, and he felt he was very unsuitable for this job, you can see that he was totally opposite of what the spies wanted. The spies had their jobs already, and they didn't want to lose their job. They wanted to stay in the desert and keep their position, as opposed to Yeshua, who didn't have the position, and he didn't even want the position. He didn't want the kavod. He didn't want the glory. See how diametrically opposed they were. Going forwards to in the Perek, in the beginning of the Parsha, Perek Yud Gimel Pasuk Chaf, you'll see now that the spies had already come with their whole job description and say, we want to go in and do this whole mission. Moshe Rabbeinu gave them some instructions. What were these instructions? Okay, if you want to go in, see if it's good or bad, look at the city, see if they're fortified, etc. And among these questions, there was a command. There was an order. He was telling them already, have a look at this, have a look at that, have a look at this, is it good, is it bad, etc. Then he said something which was like an exclamation mark. What was that? Says the Pasuk. Uma haaretz hashminahi im raza hayesh ba'etz im ayin. He's talking about the land. Is it fertile? Is it lean? Are there trees there? Are there not trees there? Then he says the command. V'itchazaktem ulekachtem b'pri haaretz. Strengthen yourself and take the fruits of the land. First of all, why was this in the form of a command? Before he was saying, is it good, is it bad? Just say to them, have a look at the fruits. Are they good, are they bad? He didn't say that. He said, take the fruits. But the question is made even more difficult by the fact that he said this word, v'itchazaktem, strengthen yourself. Why do you need to strengthen yourself before you take the fruits? Now the simple answer you could say was, if anyone's seen a bottle of Palwin number 5 or number 9, you'll see a picture there of people with sticks carrying a huge bunch of grapes. That's supposed to be the spies taking the grapes back into the desert to show Moshe Rabbeinu and everybody, look, these grapes are massive, it's a land of giants, and da-da-da. You could say V'tchazakta means strengthen yourself because these grapes are going to be mighty heavy. So make sure you get your exercise in. You could say that. Of course, there's a much deeper answer. Because the spies were suffering from something which was endemic within the Jewish people. And it's rife now just like it was then. And I'll explain to you what it is. And this is actually the subtitle of my shir. The title of the shir is Behind the Lines, but the subtitle is You Can't Have a Mission Without a Mission Statement. What was the mission statement? The mission statement was the statement that every Jew has, regardless of whether he's a spy, he's not a spy, whether he's Moshe Rabbeinu, whether he or she is a simple Eved or a Shivcha. Could be anybody. The mission statement of the Jew is that you are a Jew and you must listen to what Hashem has told you. You have to keep the Torah, you have to keep the mitzvahs under all and every circumstance. And if your mission statement is anything different from this mission statement, then your mission will be doomed to failure. Let me elaborate further. Hashem had already told them, I am giving you the land of Israel. Now, the spies should have stopped there. They should have said, okay, we're waiting to be told what to do. Naseh v'nishma. Please tell us what we should do next. We're happy to listen. We're happy to be told. Not coming up with their own answers. And, like we said, their own ideas and taking it in a way that made them the bosses, as it were. No. They were suffering from lack of Jewish identity. Because Hashem had told them, this is your land. Therefore, if you go in, you can take what you need. You can take what you want. But because they would have gone in and they would have said, we can't take any grapes, we can't take any fruits, we can't go on this mission, we can't go looking and snooping around, it's nothing to do with us. Didn't Hashem just tell you, this is your land? Your going in is just a formality. In fact, you shouldn't even have gone in at all. So Moshe Rabbeinu had to turn around to them and say, V'itchazaktem, strengthen yourself. I'm giving you chizuk now. I'm telling you, it is your land. Hashem promised it to you. Don't start saying, we can't take this, it doesn't belong to us. It does belong to you. You have to take it. And this has ramifications, as I mentioned, even to this day. Because a Jew without a mission statement is suffering from a terrible, terrible machala. Because a Jew has to realize, Kol Yisrael b'nei malachim hein. All Jews are princes. Not Kol Israel Domeh LeBnei Melachim. Not like. They are princes. They're we are princes of Hashem. Our mission statement says we have to be the bearers of Hashem's Torah. Not the bearers of mobile phones that we're busy on for 90% of the time, or busy, always go on about this. I'll just put a ditto. You know what I'm referring to. I'd have to belabor the point again. That's not a mission statement of a Jew. A Jew has to be proud to be a Jew, but with that pride comes incredible responsibility. Perhaps some people get the message halfway. They say, we're very proud to be a Jew. But at the same time, do they bother to find out what's part of that Jewish pride? Why? What responsibilities come with that Jewish pride? That's also important. To know that it comes with a tremendous achrayut, tremendous responsibility to be a goy kadosh, mamlechet kohanim v'goy kadosh, a nation of priests and a holy nation. We have to be a light to the nations. That's the Jews' mission statement. Now, Hashem tells you this is your land and this is your land. That's why you get people now who are so lily-livered that they want to give away Eretz Israel. When Hashem said, no, this is your land. No Jew's got a right to give away the land. What's it got to do with us? Whether we go, that we have the right to give away Eretz Israel. No, this is your land. You should be proud of it. Any Jew who lives there should be proud that he's living in Eretz Israel, and should be aware of the responsibility that if you're a Jew living in Eretz Israel, you have to keep the Torah and the mitzvahs. Not that a Jew outside of Eretz Israel has to keep the Torah and mitzvahs. Is any less incumbent to keep the Torah and mitzvahs? Of course. It's worldwide. But in Eretz Israel, you will be spewed out if you don't do what Hashem wants. It's mefurish. The land will vomit you out. It's incumbent on every Jew to realize that that Eretz Israel belongs to him. That when you go into Eretz Israel as a spy or as an Oleh Chadash, that you're entering into the land that Hashem gave you. It's not some thing, arbitrary corner of the globe that we won over in 1948. That was very nice, of course. That's history, but it was ours anyway. The fact that we got our independence, that's I wouldn't say neither here nor there, but you have to realize Hashem gave us the land. Full stop. And the more that a Jew realizes this, the more that we can clarify our mission statement and take that mission statement forward. And this is also to do with the fact why the spies call themselves grasshoppers. We are like grasshoppers in their eyes, in the eyes of these giant people walking around like big Goliaths, big Anakim, big Ogs. Og was also a giant. Big people walking around. Everyone's scared of big people. If you're a midget and you'd be scared walking in the street. You see everyone is bigger than you. It's terrifying. I just read in not the Guinness Book of World, one of these world record books, that there was the smallest person in the world was, I think, 2 feet tall or something like that. It was tiny. This person, who he died already, he must have been terrified walking in the street because everyone's bigger than him. Everyone seems terrifying. And this is what the spies felt. They felt everyone is bigger than us. We're diminished. But the fact that they classed themselves as grasshoppers, that was their downfall. And I mentioned this story once. I believe this story, the following story, is from the Dublin Maggid. But don't quote me on it. I'm pretty sure, but I'm not 100% sure. The story goes as follows. There was once this simple farmer who was really mamashi. He lived on his farm and he knew nothing about the outside world. And somebody told him once, there's such a thing as a train. So the farmer said, what's a train? He said, a train is a big machine that it's split up into carriages. It's like these big wagons, and they're connected together, and they go, and it takes lots of things, like it's like an automated horse and cart. He couldn't believe it. He said, this is amazing, I must see what this train is. So the fellow said, okay, I'll take you. This is a friend. His friend said to him, I'll take you to where you can buy a ticket for this train, and when you get a ticket for this train, you go up to the train and give it, and then you can go on the train and you'll go on a journey, you wouldn't believe it. You'll go faster than any horse and cart. So the fellow said, wow. And this poor farmer was now amazed. He started saving up, started selling more and more carrots and more cucumbers, whatever. And he saved up, and now he had enough money to buy this ticket for this train. So he went, he bought the ticket to this train, and it wasn't for that day, it was for a few days' time. He was waiting and anticipating. And then the day came when he was going to go on the train. So now he walked into the train station and he sees, wow, this amazing thing. It's massive. It's got so many different wagons all connected together. And he sees, running towards the train, there's a group of about 10, 12 people running towards one of the carriages. And he thinks, oh, I've got to go with them. So he runs with them. But he doesn't realise that these 10, 12 people have not bought a ticket. In fact, they're stowaways. And they're running towards the cattle carriage, where the cows and the sheep or whatever they're staying there. So they run in there and they sneak in. And of course, this poor farmer doesn't know. He's never seen a train in his life. He runs towards the cattle carriage with his other 10 people. So now he's in there, and it's dark, and he can hear the sounds of the cows and the sounds of the sheep. He's thinking, this is strange. This is what I paid money for, to go on this carriage with all these animals. And of course all the people there, they're all scattering, they're hiding, and it's dark in there, and the train's going and going, and the poor farmer is very disappointed. He thinks, this is not what I paid my money for. And as the journey goes on and on, the ticket inspector comes round, and of course the ticket inspector is looking for people who are dodging their fare. So he comes and he sees the first place the ticket inspector goes is to the carriage with the animals in it. He opens up the door, and suddenly there's a big shaft of light coming through, and everyone's like running, trying to avoid being seen by this ticket inspector. And the ticket inspector comes and he says, you, where's your ticket? To one of the stowaways. He says, I haven't got a ticket. Right, off the train. And one by one, ceremoniously, he's finding all these stowaways, and eventually he comes up to this poor farmer, and of course he's terrified. He says, you, where's your ticket? Did you buy a ticket? So very sheepishly, excuse the pun, he takes out his ticket and he shows it to this ticket inspector. The ticket inspector says, you bought a ticket? He looks at the ticket, he says, first class. He says, you bought a first class ticket? He said, what are you doing in here? He said, well, what do you mean first class ticket? Is there something wrong with that ticket? He said, no. You should have been sitting there with your own table. You would have had leg room. It would have been windows, bright sunshine. You would have had somebody serving you drinks and meals and this and that. So you're sitting here with the cows and the sheep. The fellow said, oh, I'm so sorry. I'll go there straight away. But the ticket inspector says, no, it's too late now. This is the end of this journey. You have to get off. He says, please, please. He says, no, it's too late. You've made your journey now. That's it. I'm sorry, you have to get off the train now. What's the story? What's the idea behind this story? It's a very powerful story. That in life, a Jew is like a person with a first class ticket. He's not like other people who don't have that first class ticket. He's got a first class ticket. The first class ticket says on it, you are a Jew. The bearer of this document entitles you, is machayev you. Mechayev is obligates you to keep Hashem's Torah and His mitzvot, and to be a light to the nations. But what do we do instead? We forget about the ticket. It gets lost, and we don't know. And then now we're busy going to the clubs, and we're busy watching TV, and we're busy wasting our time with all sorts of shtoyot that take us away from what we're really supposed to be doing. And then it comes to the end of the journey. After 120 years, we get up there and we say, take us to Olam Haba. And they say, where's your ticket? Here's my ticket. Oh, first class tickets. I didn't know you're Jewish. Fine. They'll say to you, the Beit Din Shel Mala, okay, so where's your Torah mitzvahs? What Torah mitzvahs? Look, it says here, you're a Jew, you have to keep Torah mitzvot. So what happened? Where are they? Oh, I didn't keep any. I didn't learn anything. Didn't learn anything? Sorry, you don't belong in Gan Eden. Yeah, well, I've changed my mind, and now it's too late now, Habibi, that's it. You've had your 120 years. Don't let it get too late. Don't be like the spies who forgot their mission, they forgot their identity, they forgot who they were. And they were totally unprepared. And they messed up big time. Now I'm going to conclude with something from the Haftorah. Because the Haftorah in this week's parasha is connected, as it always is, connected to the parasha, but the Haftorah has an additional connection, because I think this is probably the only parasha, I could be wrong, but I'm assuming it's the only parasha where the two of the people who are featured in the parasha are also featured in the Haftorah. Who am I talking about? Now I'll tell you what the Midrash says first, and then I'll explain to you who these two people are. The Midrash says that Hashem loves Sheluchei Mitzvah. What are Sheluchei Mitzvah? Sheluchei Mitzvah are people who are sent on a mission to do a mitzvah. And the Midrash cites the two people Hashem gives an example, the quintessential examples of who are the Shluchei Mitzvah who Hashem loves. Who are they? Kalev and Pinchas. In fact, maybe Pinchas not mentioned this week's parasha, but in a couple of weeks you'll see his name. Pinchas and Kalev. Kalev, as we know, was one of the spies himself. He was one of the good guys. Who was Pinchas? Pinchas was the one who, in a few weeks' time, we're going to read, he speared the two people who were committing the Aveirot, and Hashem gave him the Brit Shalom, the covenant of peace. Why were they beloved of Hashem? Why did they deserve Hashem's love more than anybody? So I had a nice explanation to this. You have to understand the connection between Kalev and Pinchas on one side and Yoshua on the other. Because Kalev and Pinchas were older than Yeshua. Kalev himself was almost like a contemporary of Moshe Rabbeinu. Yeshua was the leader after Moshe Rabbeinu, as we all know. Now imagine this, the situation that Yeshua feared had come true. He now became the leader of Klal Yisrael. He of course was much younger than Moshe Rabbeinu. Now you have Kalev and Pinchas. Kalev was again older and established. Pinchas also was a Kohen, was established. Now Yeshua's come into the picture, and he's now the leader. And now he's telling Kalev and Pinchas, go on this mission and spy out the land. And of course that was the kosher, and the Haftorah tells us that was the kosher mission. That was the one that was successful and it was authorized. But at the end of the day, Kalev and Pinchas could have turned around to Yeshua and said, what are you talking about? How can you tell us what to do? We're already established. You're just the successor to Moshe Rabbeinu. How can you tell us what to do? And of course we know they didn't say that. Why didn't they say that? Of course, not to take away from their character. Of course, Kalev and Pinchas were, tzaddikim of tremendous tzaddikim. But they had a point. You know what the point was? When there was a job that needed to be done, it doesn't matter who does it. The fact is, the job has to be done. You're older, you've got more kavod, whatever it is, the job needs to be done. The job needs to be done. Yeshua tells Kalev and Pinchas, go do the job. Kalev and Pinchas did not stand up on their high horse and say, no, I'm not going to do the job. Go do it yourself. You're much younger, you're more inexperienced. No. The job needs to be done. The job needs to be done. One image that goes through my mind is my cousin David owns or inherited a large carpet business from his late father, alav shalom. And he's downscaled it a lot now, but at one point it was a huge business. He had a huge warehouse. And I remember once seeing him, I can remember like it was yesterday, taking a broom and sweeping the floor of all the schmutz on the floor. And this is the company director. This was his business. He had tens and tens of people working for him. It's a multi-million-pound business. And believe me, he had people who swept the floor as well as many, many other people working for him. But no, the place was dirty. There was a broom. He took the broom and he swept it himself. He didn't turn around and say, who am I? This is my business. I don't do sweeping. No. The job needs to be done. The job needs to be done. And that's why Hashem loves Shluchei Mitzvah. Because there could be other people to do this job. Why should I have to do it? Me have to traipse around. And you know something? Shluchei Mitzvah, they never get the glory. Nobody ever hears about them. Nobody knows. People know. People know who does the work behind the scenes. Unless it gets publicised, you don't get to hear of them. All the people who set a kiddush on Shabbat, you hear about them? You know who it is? No. Do they get the recognition? Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Do you honestly think that kiddush, that beautiful spread, or the Suda Shlishit, that's spread out so nicely with all the cutlery and everything and the tablecloths, that made itself? There's somebody behind it. That's a Shliach Mitzvah. Doesn't happen by itself. Tables don't make themselves. And that's why Hashem loves them. It's like Hashem loves the underdog. Hashem loves the people who they want to do the job, not because, it's my job, I have to do it, and I want the kavod, and I want the glory, and I want the recognition. No. They do the job because the job needs to be done. It needs to be done. Finished. Put the kavod to one side. Don't care about the kavod. So Kalev and Pinchas had the mission, and they did it with no fuss, nothing. Now I'm going to finish off with my very last point and a story. So what the time is? Okay. Let you off a little bit early today. We know also in this week's parasha, there is the section that talks about tzitzit. Why is this section of tzitzit stuck in with this whole story about the spies? Is there a connection? So, you ever heard this thing about the tzitzit that says a tzitzit which has tchelet, which has the blue fringe there? The tchelet is meant to remind you about the sea, because the tchelet is a blue, like an azure blue type of colouring. So this tchelet on the tzitzit reminds you of the sea reminds you of the sky reminds you of the kisei kavod, and the kisei kavod reminds you about the mitzvot, and the mitzvot remind you about Hashem. So therefore, through this extension, looking at the tzitzit reminds you about Hashem and His mitzvot. So the simple question can be asked, why don't you just say, look at the tzitzit, and automatically the tzitzit will remind you about Hashem? So one answer is, you want to get to Hashem? There's no shortcut to Hashem. You can't just look at something and it reminds you of mitzvot. You can't have the mitzvot on a plate and they're all done. No, you need to do things in stages. You've got to go tzitzit, to sea, to sky, to kisei kavod, and to mitzvot, and to Hashem. It's a process. Acquiring Torah and acquiring mitzvahs is a process. There's no shortcut. But there's a deeper idea. Because what happens when you look at the tzitzit? Do you just look at the tzitzit and see blue? No. Because if you look at the tzitzit and see blue, all you see is a beautiful colour, and that will be it. And that colour is supposed to spark off a recognition of another thing. Which again, if you take a deeper look, another thing, and another thing, and it's a chain. It's all about looking at something, not in a superficial manner, not looking in a blinkered way, in a very myopic way, at something which is right there in front of you, but taking that second look and looking deeper and seeing, what does this thing convey to me? And of course, if a person does that with the tzitzit, it will eventually come to think about Hashem in the most profound way. Why is this parasha stuck with the spies? Because the spies were exactly the opposite. The spies took one look, and that was enough for them. They went into the land, they saw the giants, and they scarpered. They ran. That was enough for them. Did they take a deeper look and say, why are these giants here? Why are there so many funerals? Remember, this time last year we talked about there were many hundreds of funerals. Every day there was hundreds of funerals happening. Why? I think we worked out something like 700 levayas every day. Why was this happening? Because Hashem made a miracle. So that the people would be, all these giants, whatever, would be busy with all these levayas, and then you can go and do your mission. Even though I did not authorize the mission, said Hashem, I'm still looking after you. I'm still making sure that you would go in and do the job and come out. I don't want you to come to any harm. I'm turning a blind eye because that's what you want to do. I'm not authorizing it. But now that you've taken the choice, I don't want it to come to any harm. But they didn't look beneath the surface. They didn't look and say, why is this happening? They didn't take that second look. They didn't make that connection. And they just took the first look and that was it. They couldn't take it any further. But a Jew is supposed to look behind the lines. He can't just look at what's black and white on the paper and say, that's it. You know, when a person opens up a Gemara, I can tell you from personal experience, this happens to me not all the time, but sometimes. I look at the daf of the Gemara, and it sometimes happens that I just see words swimming, and they seem like ants crawling on the page, and I think, how am I ever going to learn this daf? How am I going to learn this Tosfot? And I just lose focus. Why is that? Why do people do that? I'm sure I'm not the only one. I'm sure there are people who just look at the Gemara and say, how am I going to do it? How am I ever going to understand what's written here? It's totally beyond me. Because you're not taking that second look. You're not looking behind the lines. You're not looking beneath the text. You're not applying yourself. You look at the Tosfot once. You look at the Rashi once. You look at the Sugya once. You'll never get it. Unless you're a big Talmid Chacham. You've got to look at it again, and again, and again, and again. And when you've done it, you do it again. However many times it takes. That's why there's 4 lines at the top. You know when you see the Rashi at the top, there's 4 lines. You look at the Daf Gemara, because you're supposed to go over the Sugya at least 4 times. Otherwise you can't expect yourself to understand it. Don't look at the page and see the ants crawling like that, these words. Take a second look, take a deeper look. Look behind the lines. You know, there's a line from a song. I was debating whether to quote any non-Jewish lyrics from songs, but you know, I made a cheshbon. I say, you know, there's something in this line. There was a song once. The line in that song, it goes, "I saw the crescent, you saw the whole of the moon." What does that mean to me? A person can look up in the sky, and you can look at it from 2 points of view. You can see the crescent of the moon. You'll say, this is a tiny little thing. This is like a little, a small, like this. This is not a beautiful star. This is a sliver of light in the sky. Or you could look at this crescent and say to yourself, there must be something more than this. There must be something more than this. It can't be just like a tiny sliver of light. And you come back the next day and you see a bit more. And you see a bit more. And suddenly, before you know it, there's a whole moon looking at you. And the moon is beautiful, bright. Even at night, sometimes the moon can be so bright, it can light up, you know, not like the sun, but you can see amazing things. So are you going to look at the moon and see just the crescent? Or are you going to see that there's a moon there? There's a whole sphere. There's a whole planet. Does the moon change? No. The moon doesn't change. The only thing that's changed between these 2 points of view is your perspective. Do you look at yourself like a Jew and a mensch? Or you look at yourself like a chagav, like a grasshopper, like a gornisht. I'm a gornisht. I've got no self-esteem. I'm standing amongst all these 70 nations who are trying to bear down on the Jews. I'm a nothing compared to the Americans, compared to the Russians, I'm just a poor little Klal Yisrael. No, your job is totally different. You're no less than them. Don't look at the superficiality. You look at what Hashem told you. Hashem told you, Mamlechet Kohanim v'Goy Kadosh. That should be enough for you. Hashem created everything. I think He knows what He's doing. So He's given you that job, and that's your job. Person has to feel that identity. And now I'm going to finish off with this story to talk about, which sort of ties up everything I've said so far. It's a story from Rav Shimshon Pinkus, and it's a true story apparently. There was once a fellow who had got married, and him and his wife never had children. And the years went on, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. After 23 years of marriage, and of course, who knows, who could possibly imagine the pain that this couple was going through, being childless for 23 years. This fellow was beside himself. I don't know how else to describe it. He was at the end of the road. He was clutching at straws. Somebody came and told him, this story happened in Eretz Israel. Somebody came and told him, look, there's a certain Hasidic shtibel in one area on the other side of Yerushalayim from where this fellow lived. And if you go there on Yom Kippur and you get the aliyah of Maftir, which is Maftir Yonah, then you'll see it's a segula, you will have a child. Now of course, once you've been through all the options and somebody says to you something you haven't tried, you'll try it. Nothing to lose. So he went there. He went there on Erev Yom Kippur. On the day of Yom Kippur, because it's the Mincha Tefillah. And he got there nice and early. And because it's a Hasidic shtibel, and he is not Hasidic, he sticks out like a sore thumb. And he sees somebody else in the shul also didn't look very Hasidic. So he went up to this fellow, Shalom Aleichem, Mata oseh po. He engaged him in conversation. What are you doing here? And the other fellow said, Oi. He said, you don't know. He said, I've been married for 3 years. And we haven't got any children, and I heard if you come and get maftir yonah, that it'll be segula, and we'll be able to have a child. And this fellow is hearing this and he's thinking, 3 years? I've been married 23 years. Of course he never said anything. And now he realized that the secret is out of the bag, that somebody else is here, also going for the same aliyah. So what did this fellow do? After 23 years of marriage, he got up and he left the shul. He let the other fellow have the aliyah. Can you imagine the strength of character? And this is not a person who said, oh, you know what, I didn't believe in the segula anyway. He was desperate, this fellow. He was desperate. He left the shul. He did not get the aliyah. And if you think this story has a happy ending, it does. Because in the 24th year of marriage, this couple had a baby boy. Miracle of miracles. It says Rav Shimshon Pincus, a person has to believe with such a belief, such an emunah, that even if you walk into a land and everything seems like you're under a black cloud, giants, big fruits, death, carnage, hundreds of levias everywhere you look, dead people piled up, you cannot lose your emunah. And more than that, as we mentioned on several occasions before, a person has to serve Hashem under all and every circumstance. You can't turn around and say, you know what, it's not working for me now, I'm going to give up being Eved Hashem, I'm retiring. Until the situation gets better, I'm retiring. It doesn't work like that. It does not work like that. You have to serve Hashem under every circumstance. Who knows why this fellow was sent to this shul? He was sent to the shul, as you can see from this story, to not have the aliyah. He was sent there to refuse, not to go and take part in the segula. You think Hashem has to have a segula before we have a child? Nay, of course not. The avodah of this particular Jew in this story, in this beautiful story, was the fact that he opted out of what would seem to be his best option. A person has to serve Hashem under all and every circumstance. No matter how much it seems dark and gloomy and black, you have to look deeper. You have to look behind the lines. And Bezrat Hashem, we should all look up. And when we see that figurative moon, we should not see just the crescent and think that that's all there is. We should look at it and we should see the whole entire moon.